What's going on, everyone? Happy weekend, TGIF. Hope everyone enjoys the weekend, has a safe one. So today I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a while. Movie review. By the way, my name is Aaron Collins, and you could say this is another rendition of me addressing worldly issues in a godly way. This is just one of my movie reviews. And stay tuned, everyone, because eventually I'm going to be moving those to my Patreon, so stay tuned. Anyway, without further ado, let's go and get on into the commentary. So, this is a film that was recommended to me by a good friend of mine named Cap PY2. Appreciate you, Cap, for turning me on to this. And this is a film called called Life of a King. I think The Life of a King. Anyway, it stars Cuba Gooding Jr. And apparently, I believe it's based on a true story about an ex-con named Eugene Brown, who spent 17 years in prison for an armed robbery. And while he was in prison, he learned how to play the game of chess. So, as he learned to play this game and the different positions and the different pieces and what they mean, he began to apply chess to life as a metaphor. Upon his release from prison, he attempted to make and repair and mend the relationship between his children. Of course, meeting his daughter, who he has been estranged from after she rejected him initially. He began to go into a school. He was looking for work, having a little bit of a hard time finding work, as besets ex-cons and those that are getting out trying to turn their lives around. Anyway, he will happen to come across an old friend of his who was also known in the street, someone who actually idolized him when he was in the street. Of course, this friend wound up becoming a street hustler himself, and not necessarily in a good sense. Basically selling certain products to people, narcotic-wise. Anyway, he's offering him work to work for him, which he turns down, obviously, being an ex-con. So he finds another friend of his who's doing more legit enterprises, more legit work, and he turns him on to working at a school as a janitor. As he's working as a janitor, he talks to the principal of the school. One thing, though, while he's filling out his application, he lies about the fact that he served time in jail, in prison, and he winds up, well, in the midst of that, while he's working as a janitor, he happens to do a favor. The principal asked him to come and do her a favor and sit in detention. Detention has a group of students in it that pretty much for whatever reason, problem students. They ran the original detention monitor out. She couldn't deal with the pressure. She was threatened. So by him being a male presence, he does the principal a favor and sits in there. And the students, they realize they can't push him around like they did the original detention monitor. So while he's sitting there, tell him what to do, they comply. He walks out after doing her a favor. She asks him back again. He's in the detention class monitoring the students. The students there giving him a hard time trying to test him, which he rebuffs their things because he's been there before and there's nothing they can do to him. So what he does, he pulls out a chessboard and begins to talk to them about chess. The students begin to laugh at him. The three main students that are in the detention class are, and follows, the oldest one being Clifford, and he's also a leader of sorts. He he has a dominance over some of the other students, and they do what he says. Followed by him is Tahim Sanders, who goes by T, and then last is Peanut. Peanut is the more impressionable one. He wants to hang with the other guys. At the same time, he's a little bit more straight-laced than the other two. Anyway, after winning them over somewhat, he begins to teach them chess and how chess is like a metaphor for life. Of course, Clifford, being who he is and being another alpha type of presence, he begins to rebuff and constantly test Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown is usually always backing him down. So after a while, after coming back to the detention a little bit more, he begins to talk to them. At this point, he has their full undivided attention. They're interested in what he has to say. Clifford, on the other hand, is still being rebellious. He's still constantly just showing dissension toward Mr. Brown, and he sees that his followers are not necessarily flocking to him. So after he challenges them to a game of chess, Pee-wee, being the youngest and most impressionable, he's able to reach Pee-wee. Pee-wee actually starts getting interested in the game of chess. He gets lost on a move. Well, T actually comes up and takes his place. And while he's watching, he notices that T has an affinity for the game, and he watches him play. And he instantly recognizes that this young man is exceptional. He's intelligent. He knows the game. Clifford, on the other hand, is not having it. He's like, no, he's taking one of my best guys. So he's appreciated. Of course, T begins to start rejecting Mr. Brown, also trying to impress Clifford. Clifford and T begin to do their thing, but Pee-wee starts to want to follow along still with them. After rejecting different attempts to ride with Mr. Brown in the vehicle, after he comes in his car to keep him off the street, not Clifford, but Pee-wee and Mr. Brown happen to come up onto an apartment complex where they see T's mom. T's mom is strung out on drugs herself. Pee-wee begins to tell him the story, how T's mom is on drugs, and that her living boyfriend is abusive, slaps her around, and even tries to come after T. In one instance, he comes after T, hits him. T actually has plans and wants to plot to kill her boyfriend, and he gets the chance. Mr. Brown talks him out of it, and he begins to tell him more about chess. However, it's one day in the detention class where the principal calls Mr. Brown to her office and discovers that he lied on his application about serving time in prison, and because of that, she has to break it to him that she has to let him go. Her back is against the wall. Of course, by her demeanor, she doesn't want to let him go because she knows that he's good for the students, that he's a strong role model for them. But because of his past record, in order to keep her job and to keep herself offline, she has to let him go, which he winds up leaving peacefully. So while he's searching for other work, he still tries to repair and mend the relationship between his own two children. One scene, he's actually seen in a prison, what appears to be a prison waiting room. Well, not a waiting room, but in a prison speaking area with guards, talking to his own son. Because like father, like son, while he was locked up, his son fell into the street life and wound up going to jail himself. He tries to patch that relationship. It doesn't go so well. His son walks away back with the guard to his cell. In the meantime, Mr. Brown, out of work, happens to come across Perry, his old friend from the street, who was kind of taking his own place, and he's got his own crew running around. One of his people he has working for him would happen to be Clifford, which is the aforementioned troubled student that was giving Mr. Brown a hard time. He's got him out there on the street selling drugs himself. He offers a job to Mr. Brown, who I'll just call him Eugene. His name is Eugene Brown. He offers Eugene a job. Eugene once again turns it down, knowing what kind of lifestyle it is. While he's actually talking to Clifford, he begins to tell Clifford and the rest of the students how the king piece is basically the piece that's supposed to be protected. You have to protect the king. If you don't protect the king can get caught, the king could get killed, the king could get taken out of the game, off the board. And whereas he begins to compare Perry as a king who Clifford protects. He knows Clifford is already working for Perry because he used to run with Perry. But Perry is the king in Clifford's life. So it was one night while they're walking, he begins to talk to T, trying to get T to go with him on a mission. Clifford, that is, getting T to go with him on a mission. At the same time, Pee-wee wants to hang around also. Around this same time, Eugene finds an old abandoned house, which he decides to build up and to turn into a chess house where kids can come, as an after-school facility for troubled youth and those who are just trying to get off the street and have an alternative other than the street to run around on. So he opens it up, begins to fix it up, turns into a chess tournament, turns into a chess place. He teaches the children about chess, the young men and women about chess, and how it's like life once again. He talks to them about kings, queens, pawns, rooks, knights, everything else having to do with the chessboard. It's around this time, while they're painting the place, trying to build it up, that Clifford comes inside and calls Taheem and Pee-wee out, or just Taheem actually, and Pee-wee and Taheem have to make a decision. Do they go with Clifford or do they stay with Eugene? They wound up making their first decision and going with Clifford. Clifford has more of a control on them than Mr. Brown because he's been with them and it's the lure of the street. In the meantime, T also has to deal with his pressure at home from his own mom being on drugs and not believing in him. And once again, he deals with her boyfriend, who he plots to kill himself for putting his hands on her and on him. And he says that he will never again put his hands on her or him. So he begins to plot to do that. So it was one night while Mr. Brown is at the house, that by this time it's almost fixed up, that T, Clifford, and Pee-wee go out on a mission. It's at night. Clifford pulls out a gun, cocks and loads it. He tells T to come with him and tells Pee-wee to stay with the car. Pee-wee says, being that who he is, being Pee-wee, being still fragile and still a little bit timid, asks him, "If you want me to stay alone?" To which this infuriates Clifford. So Clifford says, "Fine, you come with me," and T stayed with the car. Unfortunately, this is the fate that caused Pee-wee and Clifford to walk up to a couple of drug dealers. Something went down, things go awry. Next thing you know, gunshots go off. Pee-wee gets hurt, Clifford runs. T gets out the car to see what happens. And as we can see, T literally and figuratively dodges the bullet, whereas he sees that a bullet that could have been meant for him is in Pee-wee. Pee-wee winds up succumbing to his wound, which greatly saddens T because he lost his friend. Meanwhile, Clifford's nowhere to be found. Clifford is hiding out. Later on, you see Clifford riding behind the new car, nonchalantly, trying to tell T to come along with him. T rebuffs him. Clifford drives off. As you can see, Clifford's got a couple girls in the car with him. They're smoking, and he says mockingly, yeah, he misses Pee-wee also, but that's the way life is on the street. Shows no kind of remorse at all. T winds up getting closer to Eugene. He teaches him more about the game of chess. He tells his mom rejects him. So T decides to rebel against his mom's wishes and enters with Eugene Brown into a tournament of prestigious chess players, many of them white. But in order for him to get inside of the tournament, he has to have a permission slip signed by his mom, who once again rejects it because she rejects the notion of her son being anything in life and won't let him play. So he forges the slip, winds up going anyway, playing in the tournament. The officiators of the tournament find out that the slip is indeed forged and winds up giving the win to the opposing side. It just so happens while there, a radio VJ begins to take on Eugene and T's side and invites him to a radio station to talk about what happened. Whereas Eugene begins to say that the rules were the rules and that in fact T did break the rules, which infuriates the VJ, thinking that he turned on his own guy. But after a while, begins to realize that he was wrong. He begins to do things right, and still mourning the loss of his friend, T begins to take the game more seriously. In the meantime, while he's dealing with other kids, his daughter has to remind him that he was supposed to go with her to pick up her own brother who was being released, and which causes a further rift between him and his own children that he's trying to restore the relationship with. But after a while, they begin to warm up. His son, still not talking to him, walks off, and at the same time, his daughter, who's seemingly somewhat coming around, begins to be like somewhat of a go-between her father and her brother, keeping the peace. So it's after a while, T gets whipped. He somewhat, so to speak, gets whipped into shape, and he plays to play an ultimate chess tournament. But before he does that, Eugene takes him to prison to visit his old mentor and his old friend who taught him the game of chess. His mentor talks to him, tells him that the guy he's going up against is good. He wishes he could get a piece of him, but he tells him he feels that he's not there, that he can't do it. He said he will do it. Basically, he's playing the game not just for himself, but for every other black man and black woman that's out there, showing him that he is indeed intelligent, that he has what it takes to play the game. See, Eugene took a love to these children, to these kids. I'm not going to even call them children. They're young men and women. He took a loving and a liking to these young men when their own families wouldn't do it, because knowing that they're products of their environment, knowing that they still need love too, he begins to teach them the game, and while he's teaching them, they begin to warm up to him as well. So it's at the tournament, the main tournament, well, after they beat up the preliminaries, after they beat their prospective opponents, the two main ones, T and the other kid, the other young man who was known to be a really famous chess player, and he's known the game since he was 15 years old. They're up against each other. It's a close call. The young man winds up winning. T comes up in second place, but it shows though that he had what it takes to play the game. At the end, we see T's mom, who was cheering her son on. Then after that, she abruptly walks out. So seeing, even though she didn't want him to play any chess, she sees that chess is something that he's interested in, and it even got her attention. So it shows a glimmer of hope. The story is pretty good. The story on the plot lines and the different plots in the story all fleshed each other out, and they all came together. And basically it's centered around this young man named Eugene Brown, who, learning from his own mistakes, didn't want the kids making the mistakes that he made. So later on we find out that Clifford has been arrested for whatever reason. He's in jail, in prison, about to serve time for whatever it is he did. Meanwhile, his former employee, Perry, is still doing his thing, still selling drugs himself, still has some more followers. He's not showing any interest in Clifford. He obviously gets another one. It's like that's how it is in the street. When one leaves, another one replaces him. He makes an attempt to call T. T rejects his call. And at this time, Clifford begins to realize the reality of his own life and the situation that he's about to face, possibly for a long sentence in prison. In the meantime, T came up second place, but he's got the respect of everyone. He's got the respect of Eugene. The principal of the school still comes around. The chess house is coming to full fruition. It's fixed up. Basically, Eugene starts a chess club, and after a while, it becomes known that he's trying to start chess clubs all across the United States for inner city youth. At the end, we also see Mr. Brown's own two children, his son and daughter, come to the chess house. He hugs his son, he's glad to see him. And at this point, we begin to see a dynamic here where father and son are seemingly starting to come together. So, at the end, I think this is a pretty realistic story. It takes place in the Washington, D.C. area. I liked it. It was pretty good. So Cap, if you're watching this, man, thank you for turning me on to this. I would recommend anyone see it. It's actually on YouTube. It's called Life of a King. Stars Cuba Gooding Jr. When I first saw it, I wasn't sure if it was based on a true story or not, but apparently it is, because at the end, the crawl tells what Eugene Brown did and what his accomplishments were. So that right there tells me that it's based on a true story. So maybe you could also even Google Eugene Brown or Eugene Brown Chess Club. Anyway, I hope I did good with this review. Well, I have to really work on my movie reviews. I feel like I skip over a lot of stuff. I stutter a lot. I feel like anyway, I'm trying, y'all. I'm trying to get better at doing this. Anyway, let me know what you think. Like, comment, share this video. Hope everyone is inspired. I hope it makes you want to think about life. But yeah, that's the one thing I do know about chess. Chess actually, I don't know how to play, but now it's actually making me want to learn the game. Because chess actually is a tournament. It is a metaphor for life itself. Because once you checkmate, this pretty much means you made an ultimate decision. And that's like, checkmate is something that can't be reversed. Anyway, the checkmate is the ultimate decision you can make in life. But anyway, guys, once again, like, comment, share this video. Hit the bell icon to be notified when I drop more videos. Support me, y'all. Support the channel, please, at paypal.me/TheRealAaronCollins, as well as patreon.com/TheRealAaronCollins. And as always, guys, have a great weekend. Be safe. Whatever you do, be safe doing it. That's all I can say, is to be safe. So once again, y'all, God loves you. I love you. Let's do life.